Our veterans right now are going to respond to the call and are responding to the call at a very important time in our nation's history where we have to protect our nation from our domestic enemies. And that is not overstating it. We have a situation now in Oregon that you've dug into, and I thought it was important to bring you on right away to talk about the Hammond case. This family has been so demonized by the BLM, by the federal government, called terrorists. They have sought after these people, destroyed their lives, and incarcerated these people, designating them as terrorists, haven't they?
They have. They have done that. It started, they've been fighting this battle for, about 16 years now. And, well, actually probably longer than that if we really looked into it, but it's got fairly intense for 16 years. And these are individuals who, they're just good, humble, kind people, and they have literally destroyed their lives. And
it started 16 years ago. Basically, I call it they just about slow cook the people that they're seeking after. The BLM and the Fish and Game and those federal authorities that have been trying to take our land, and they've been doing it for a long, long time. But it's a slow incremental. What is it? A slow incremental incursion upon a family's rights to sovereignty and enjoyment peacefully of their land, right?
Yeah, the Hammonds, they purchased their ranch in 1964 and moved on it. They actually moved from California and had a little money, and this was their dream, and they had the background, and they moved there. And it's a beautiful ranch there in the Diamond Valley. It's about 53 miles out of any other town. Burns, Oregon is the closest town, so they live way out there. The house was just almost like a shack, but they fixed it up, and they raised their family there. In the early 90s, the Hammonds filed on a livestock water with the state of Oregon, which is their right to do. They filed on a water, and they obtained that water right, and they hold the deed still today. But when the Bureau of Land Management and the Fish and Wildlife Service found out that the water was near the Malheur Wildlife Refuge, they became very agitated. They became very belligerent. And then they began their vindictive behavior.
Let's pick up where we left off. And I'm very, very open and honest about what I believe to be terrorism upon ranchers being perpetrated by the Bureau of Land Management and the federal government in their efforts to try to seize land, water rights, and do whatever they can. They will stop at nothing, including seeking. I would say the rights to do so, or justification for doing so, to protect endangered species. They even make stuff up on their list. They want the water rights. They will stop at nothing. They want to run ranchers off of the land in the West. But please pick up where you left off.
Yeah, to pick up on that, I'd like to read just a couple things that I wrote to the county sheriff, which he's a new sheriff now, and he is showing some possibility of actually standing. But I wrote several things to him, but a couple sentences here, and it just says exactly what you said. It says, the Hammonds are good people that carve their living out of the land they live on, much like the Native Americans and early pioneers. Their experience, practical use, and care for the land has brought them at odds with those that harbor the ideology that it is a moral obligation to restrict man from the use of the land and resources. We respect that no two people think the same, and there are many opinions of how things should be accomplished. However, when one positions himself in government to force others to live the way they believe, a serious line has been crossed. It is our solemn belief that the multiple federal employees are using their position in government to remove the Hammonds from the land, to set a precedence for the removal of other land users. We declare that the Hammonds are not terrorists. They have not and would not hurt those around them. They are kind and generous people that love their neighbors. They have committed no crime and must not be punished further for these absurd accusations. We, as the county sheriff, you have taken an oath of office to defend against foreign and domestic threats. You hold the responsibility to ensure the Hammonds are protected from those that will continue to use government to force their personal beliefs on others. So, yeah, it reminded me a lot of what you just said, and felt like I should probably read that.
So, yes, sir, absolutely, very applicable. And your belief, based on did you meet with the Harney County Sheriff, David Ward?
I did.
Is he constitutional? Do you believe?
Well, I believe he is, but time will only tell. He is collecting information as we speak on the Hammond case. Part of the reason why I assembled all the emails and all the proof and evidence and findings, I posted those all on the Bundy Ranch blogspot.com, so that he can have that evidence and those that stuff and start to go through it. And it's amazing what these people have gone through. I mean, it is just horrible. And I don't know how much time you want or how much information you want from me. But
actually, you know what? I mean, I want to leave it up. I want to leave it up to you. I know you're traveling. I would like you to. There's a lot of information that's contained in this. We're going to provide all the links in today's episode. As long as you can stay with me and break this down, I think this is a really, really important. I'm calling it a case, an important story to convey to the American people. But please stay with me for as long as you can.
Well, so we kind of left off where they had the issues with the waters, and the state, proved that, or ruled that the waters were theirs. They had issues with them blocking off roads to their private properties, and the county ended up identifying that the road was the county's, and all of this basically started this vindictive behavior towards the Hammonds. And the Hammonds, again, are very simple people. They just want to ranch. They're not people that want any kind of confrontation. They just want to ranch, and they want to use their property in the way that they intended, in the way they purchased them for. So anyway, shortly after the road and the water disputes, the BLM and Forest Service then arbitrarily revoked the Hammond's water grazing permit, revoked the Hammond's grazing permit to the upper part of their ranch, and they didn't have any cause. They didn't give any cause or any court proceedings or any court rulings. They just literally took half their ranch from them. Just said, you don't have the rights, the grazing rights anymore. We're taking them away. And the thing about it is, they also restricted them from using their private property to graze on, because Oregon is what's called a traditional fence out state. And what that means is that Oregon requires no obligation on part of an owner to keep his or her livestock within a fence or to maintain control over the movement of the livestock. That's what it means. And so the Hammonds intended to still use their private property, but the federal government ruled in a federal court that the federal government did not have to observe the Oregon fence out laws, and that those laws were only for the people and not for them. And so what it did is it made it so they could not graze on their private property unless they built fences around it, which, as you're talking about a tremendous amount of expense to try to build those fences. But if they were to step across private property onto the public land, they would be prosecuted. And so they actually had to remove their cattle from up there, and it diminished their ranch by almost half. Wow. So at that point, again, any question, just interject. But at that point, it actually put them in some financial hardships, and to the point where they actually had to sell their ranch in order to buy some other pieces of land enough to graze their cattle on.
Mm-hmm.
So their original ranch, they were forced through this financial burden that was put on them because they lost half their ranch, or half their grazing. They ended up having to sell their original ranch and buy some other parcels. And the pieces that they lost or that they purchased were another private property, and it had two grazing rights on public land connected to it.
Ammon,
and later,
Ammon, can I interject a question here before we move along? Because I'm hearing the same thing, and you were the one, and I want to tell our listeners, I tell them all the time, Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 17. That's when you told me, you remember, we were sitting down at that restaurant,
That's
and you said, I do know we're right, and it's in the Constitution. Let me show it to you. And you opened it up and read it to me. I'm hearing from you that the federal government once again issued a ruling, okay, claiming their jurisdiction over states' rights, and just forcing themselves their jurisdiction, saying that they didn't have to observe the Oregon fence-out law, superseding states' rights and sovereignty rights per the Constitution. It was an unconstitutional ruling. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's unconstitutional that they're administrating the land in the first place.
Yes, sir.
The public land is supposed to be administered by the state and then ultimately the counties.
Right.
That way the people can have local representation and the right to local self-government. But what's happened is the federal government, again, understands where wealth is generated, and that is generated from the land, from the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Everything we live in, we wear, we use, the phones we're talking, the cars we drive, the computers we use, everything comes from the earth.
Mm-hmm.
All comfort and prosperity comes from the earth.
Yes, sir.
And they understand this. Therefore, they are taking extreme measures to control the resources of the earth, and they're willing to use force to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, these are all symptoms of a much bigger problem. And the problem is that they are controlling, keeping the land away from the people and its rightful owners.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, back to Article 1, Section 817 of the Constitution, it reads that basically, to summarize it, that once a state becomes a state, then no longer does the federal government have the right to administrate the land unless they get consent from the state legislatures. They purchase it, and they can only use it for the purpose of the erection of forts, magazines, dockyards, and other needful buildings.
Post offices.
So these, like post offices and so forth. So these public lands that are being held from the people and controlled by the federal government are 100% in direct violation of the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah.
And that is the big problem, because if it was administrated by the county,
Mm-hmm.
there wouldn't be this problem. And if there was, the people could, solve it. They would just throw the elected officials out, and they would hire new elected, and they would do that. At least they'd have a chance of doing that.
Right.
But when it comes to the federal government, they just can't do anything.
So based on your research, are you determining that these federal court rulings and stuff like that is the point of origination, which is unconstitutional, and that's what came upon this Hammond family to begin with?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Nowhere in the Constitution have the people give the federal government authority to be making these arbitrary codes and regulations on land inside a state. So all of it's wrong. From the very beginning, it's wrong.
Yeah, sir.
But now they're willing to use force upon these people that are using the land, and actually, declare them as terrorists, as arsons, and fine them. The Hammonds have been fined over $400,000, and they've already paid half of that. And they also have spent the son Stephen has spent a year in federal prison already. The father has spent 3 months.
Tell that story about how that came about, Ammon.
Yeah. So basically, I've set the the vindictive behavior and kind of what set this whole thing up.
Mm-hmm.
And then, they had some hardships back and forth. And then in early of 2001, Stephen Hammond, who's the son of Dwight, called the fire department and informed them that he was going to perform routine prescribed burns on their ranch. Now you have to understand that in that area, the grass is thick, and if you don't burn it, the new vegetation the next year will not come up. And so basically, it's hard on if you don't burn it, it's hard on the land. It's less productive and less healthy, and so it's been for centuries. Even the Native Americans burned it every year. They do prescribed burns. They burn the old grass. It's not been eaten,
Mm-hmm.
and then the next year it comes up fresh and good and healthy for all the animals.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was doing that routine prescribed burn and called it in to inform him that he was going to do that. And then later that day, he started the fire on private property, and then the fire went over to public land, and it burned 127 acres of the grass, which wasn't a big deal because it was still their range,
right?
And they still owned the grass, but it was on public land. So the Hammonds end up putting the fire out themselves, and there's pretty much no communication with the federal government at that time. And then in 2006, a massive lightning storm, and it started multiple fires through the whole valley. I mean, some people even said that it started up to 100 fires, okay, because of the lightning storm was so massive. And then most of them all joined together, and it literally was inflaming the whole countryside. And so to prevent the fire from destroying the winter range and possibly their home, Stephen started a backfire on their private property, and the backfire was so successful it put out the whole lightning fire. And they had covered thousands of acres before then, but it actually the backfire that Stephen started actually went and actually worked perfectly. It put out the fire and possibly saved their home.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened, and then a few days later, after that fire was put out, Burns District, or an agent from the Burns District BLM office, asked Stephen if he would meet him in Burns for coffee, and Stephen accepted. And when he arrived, he was arrested by the Harney County Sheriff's Department, and then they ordered him to basically go back to the ranch and get his father, and come into town, and they were both arrested. And the U.S. Attorney's Office charged them with arsenal terrorism under the Federal Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996.
Yeah, which carries a penalty, and we're going to skip this break here and continue on. What are the ultimate penalties through those charges they assessed on him?
So this act carries a minimum sentence of 5 years in prison and a maximum sentence of death. And the thing about it is this act of Congress was supposed to be for those who acted in terrorism actions and used fire to burn government property.
Mm-hmm.
And so the U.S. Attorney's Office said, well, this is what the Hammonds did because they burnt federal grass.
Unbelievable.
Which they said was their property, which again is unconstitutional from its premise.
Yes, sir.
And not only take the fact that the Hammonds were actually, unfortunately, they didn't understand the whole principles or the whole everything, but they were actually paying the federal government for the permit. Therefore, they actually owned the grass.
Mm-hmm.
Even in their own laws, they owned the grass. So the sad thing about it is, the federal government began an attack to demonize the Hammonds locally there, so they wouldn't get local support, and they put their mug shots all over the news and posting them as arsonists, all over. And Susan Hammond, the wife and mother, she said, I would walk down the street or go in a store, and people I had known for years would take extreme measures to avoid me. And so they were attacked personally, their characters were attacked. And people that didn't understand would just avoid them altogether.
Ammon, are you noticing a pattern here over and over and over again? The federal government, I'm mentioning Waco, how they demonized that family, they took away all the public support, they made them look like terrorists to justify their actions, to go in there and kill all those women and children, babies, and at Waco. They did the same thing at Ruby Ridge. They did the same thing at Bundy Ranch. We watched them do the same thing over and over again. Same exact patterns.
Yeah, and they're flat lies that they infiltrate into the media, and the media picks it up, and they literally try to get the neighbors to turn against neighbors in order to justify, or at least in order to promote justification of destroying a family and removing them from the use of the land.
Yeah. And take away public support for them. So that
yeah, exactly. They make them like, well, man, here these people are so bad. They're arsonists. They started fires. They deserve what they get.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's how they do it. And let me give you a kind of a crazy story when it comes to the Hammonds. This is actual. You could look it up if you go to Capitol Press, or you'll have the link. So, But shortly after their sentencing, the Capitol Press ran a story about the Hammonds, and a person who was identified as Greg Alliam posted 3 comments and calling the ranchers clowns who endangered firefighters, and they said and other people in the area while burning valuable vegetation on the rangeland. That's what he supposedly said. But Greg Alliam, he is, first of all, he's a retired BLM agent. Okay. And he was a heavy equipment operator for the BLM, and he had retired with them. And he called the Capitol Press, and he was infuriated. He was extremely upset because he did not make those comments, and he demanded that they take them down from their website, even though they'd already been sent out in everything else. But he demanded they take them down, and then he also threatened that if he didn't find out the source of them, that he would, basically hold them accountable. So the Capitol Press did what do they call it? An internet protocol for search for the address of where the comments came from. And you won't believe where they came from.
I can guess, but go ahead. Daniel P. Love's
they
office.
Came from the BLM's office in Denver, Colorado.
Of course. Yes. Of course.
Yeah, and so Alliam, he's actually friends with the Hammonds, and so the neighbors in the area told him that they read those comments. They couldn't believe he said those, and of course he didn't. And then later he noted, listen, this is interesting. Now remember, he was a BLM. He worked for the BLM, retired from them, worked for them for many years, and he said, this is his words exactly: they are not terrorists. There is a hatred in the BLM for them, and I don't get it.
Wow.
So, I mean, he knew from the inside that there's this hatred. There's this, this vindictive behavior for the Hammonds, who I don't know how anybody can hate them. I mean, they're just as good and as kind people as I've ever met in my life. So anyway, to thicken the plot, the Capitol Press went and asked Jody Wells, who's the Deputy State Director for Communication at the BLM Oregon's office, what would happen to these individuals in the BLM that must have, again, posted this to demonize the Hammonds. And what Jody Wells says of the BLM says, that if one of their agents falsified the comments, they would keep it private and not inform the public.
Oh, really? Said that? Said that on the record?
What's that?
Really? She said that on the record?
Wow. She did say that on the record. That is correct. So anyway, so then in September 2006, they went through this court proceeding, and I'll talk you a little bit about that. But in September of 2006, the Hammonds' home was raided, and they came in and just basically, raided their homes and issued a bogus search warrant. And I say bogus because they had no evidence whatsoever of any false actions on the Hammonds at all. They were coming in, they were trying to just such corruption. They said that they found a boot print and a tire track near one of the many fires. Now you got to remember, this fire was huge. It went 150 miles long. Okay,
right.
And they found a boot track and a boot track and a tire track, and they were literally trying to find something in the Hammond's home and on the ranch that was similar to that, so that they can, pin this on them. And the thing is it was known, documented. Everybody knew that the lightning started the fire. But somehow, because he started this backfire, that they were going to try to pin, all of this on him.
Wow.
And on them. Anyway, so they never found anything that resembled the footprints and all that. But Susan Hammond, the wife, later said, "I have never felt so violated in my life. We are ranchers, not criminals." And then Stephen openly maintains his testimony that he started the backfires to save the winter grass from being destroyed, and that the backfires ended up working so well it put out the fire entirely altogether. And so he still maintains that. I mean, of course he does, but he's very adamant about it. And so anyway, but they charged him with those charges anyway, arsenal terrorists under that federal act, Anti-Terrorism Act. Now, there was several things during the court proceeding that I would like to bring to everybody's attention.
Please.
And I would, again, I say all these things that we have found, we have had them verified with 2 or more witnesses. So, I feel that that's a pretty good foundation to be able to speak about and say that it actually happened. So, anyway, during the trial proceedings, the federal court, that judge, his name was Michael Hogan, Judge Michael Hogan. He did not allow time for certain testimonies, evidence into the trial that would exonerate the Hammonds. And, for example, the federal prosecuting attorney, his name is Frank Papagni. A little difficult for me to say, but Papagni is how you say it. He was allowed full access to the court for 6 days. He was allowed to present his evidence, and he had all the time he wanted to present the testimony that strengthened the demonization of the Hammonds. And you know how you can just imagine what a prosecuting attorney that works for the federal government and is extremely skilled at deceit and manipulations and very articulate. You can imagine what he could do in 6 days, right? So anyway, and then, but the offensive part of this is that the Hammonds attorneys were only allowed 1 day.
Really?
Yep, they were only allowed 1 day.
That's amazing.
And much of the facts about the fires and the land and why the Hammonds acted the way they did was not allowed into the proceedings, and was not heard by the jury. So there were things such as like not allowing the judge did not allow time for the jury to hear or review certified scientific findings that the fires improved the health and the productivity of the land. They also were not given enough time to present that the Hammonds had been subject to this vindictive behavior for many years by multiple federal agents.
Now, what year was this trial going on? Back in 2011, 2012?
No, in 2012, which again was 11 years after the first fire, and what would it be? 5 years after the second trial. And that's the other thing to remember. They did not file on this until 5 days before the statute of limitation expired. And the Hammonds believe it is an effort to make it hard to defend themselves because, all of the evidence out on the land is now gone.
Is gone, right?
And they know this, and they know that. And then they've been building for 5 years this case, and the Hammonds are thinking that, it's probably just going to go away because they're not saying anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden they hit them with, with full force of the most powerful government known to man.
Mm-hmm.
And with, just kind of give you an idea, there's 7,500 U.S. attorneys, and each one of them have their own office, have their own staff,
mm-hmm.
and they have unlimited resources to prosecute the American people.
That's right. Can I ask you a question? Not to take us off track here. Does that concern you with the BLMs and the federal government's silence after what happened in 2014 at Bundy Ranch?
Yeah, it does. But you have to understand that the Hammonds, if the Hammonds made a mistake, it sure wasn't criminal. What it was is them giving legitimacy to the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
And see, my dad, in his wisdom, even though he's just an old rancher, but he's pretty smart.
Mm-hmm.
He can't, he doesn't talk that articulate, at least in public. People might think that he might not be smart, but he's one of the smartest men I know.
Yes.
Smartest man I know.
I agree.
And he figured out a long time ago that there was no justice in the federal court system. And so from that point over, he was not going to allow himself to be subject to it.
Mm-hmm.
And he just said, you guys are wrong. You do not have authority to be prosecuting me in the first place. So therefore, I will not play your game.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, long story is, if they try to pull us in the federal court, we wouldn't go.
Right.
We would stand on our constitutional premises and say, you do not have authority, therefore we are not going to waste our lives, our living, our and everything, so that you can just rule the way you want to in your own court.
So not to submit to their jurisdiction, which is absolutely
not at all.
Yeah, that's right. That's the way.
That's what people have said. Climbing, you must have a legal, legal bill that's over, millions of dollars. No, my dad hasn't spent all his money on lawyers because he does not subject himself. It's a duty of the people to recognize when any government is overreaching.
Yes.
And the only way to really combat that is just say, you don't have authority to do that. And therefore I'm not going to allow myself to be subject to it.
Yeah. Yeah, now the Hammonds themselves, they didn't believe themselves to be doing anything wrong. And even you're saying that they openly admitted that they were doing ranching type stuff, setting backfires and doing the appropriate thing. They made all of those admissions trusting that the system was going to weigh in their favor, right?
Yeah, they couldn't believe that, first of all, that they were being charged as terrorists, and also as arsenal terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was absurd for doing the same thing that they've done for, hundreds of years. And then Stephen started a backfire and stopped the fire, actually. And he, like his family said, like his mother said, he was a hero. He should have been, put on the backs of the community and paraded around.
Well, how can they get away with charging them with terrorism? And in fact, they convicted them for arsenal terrorism. Yes. How can they get away with that when you haven't even described to me that they've shown intent to cause harm to the community? They've actually benefited the community through their actions.
Absolutely. But see, they demonized them, and then they got them in their court system. And then once you're in the court system, they can do whatever they want, and they do.
Wow.
My dad, again, he explains it really well. He says, going to a federal court is like a man coming into your house and he beats up your wife and your children. So you take him to court, and you're all in there ready to get justice for the actions of this man. And they say, all arise for the honorable judge. And a man walks in a black robe, and you look up, and it's the very man that beat up your wife and children.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, perfect analogy.
And how are you going to get justice in that system?
Certainly not. So
you know,
Dwight,
when the plane. So anyway, that is why, again, these are symptoms of a bigger problem.
yes.
And that is why the Hammonds were convicted.
Mm-hmm. So
Because
2012, they were
arbitrary
convicted. Is that correct? 2012?
Yeah, 2012. So
Okay.
I told you a little bit how the proceedings went. Let me keep going on because there's more corruption.
Amen. Oh
in the
yeah, no.
courts
Can you
than just
can you
that.
do me a favor? Just let me get over the top of the hour news break.
Sure.
I just need to cut the recordings over. I'm going to skip the top of the hour news break. In fact, let me come right back after we just take care of some stuff here, some housekeeping. We'll be right back,
Sounds
ladies
great.
and gentlemen. Don't go away. I'm going to skip the top of the hour news break. We're going to continue on with this. I'm actually riveted by this story. Yet another example of the true terrorists. I have to call them the terrorists. The Bureau of Land Management, the federal government, terrorizing the American people through the ranchers in the West and decimating our constitutional rights. We'll be back with Ammon Bundy right after this. Amazing story. We're going to go back to Ammon Bundy, and we're just getting over the top of the hour here so we can cut the hourly recordings over, and we're going to continue on with this story. On June 22nd, I think it was, 2012, Dwight and Stephen Hammond were convicted as national arsenal terrorists by the federal government. Now, Ammon, pick up where we left off right from there. So, amazing story.
Yeah, so talking about the proceedings and how basically biased it was, how the prosecuting U.S. attorney, Frank Papagni, had 6 days with the jury, and the defending attorney, the Hammond's attorney, only had one, all of that. But then during this 6 days, there was some pretty offensive things that went on, including U.S. Attorney Frank Papagni. He hunted down a witness that was mentally not capable to be a credible witness. The sad part about this is this witness was the grandson and nephew of the defendants, Dusty Hammond. And he testified that Stephen told him to start a fire, which he did, and that was never denied. But the thing of it is he was 13 at the time, and he was 24 when he testified, 11 years later. And at 24 years old, Dusty had been suffering with mental problems for many years. He had estranged his family, including his mother, who was the main caretaker for him. And then Judge Hogan even said in the comments in the court proceedings, said that Dusty's memories as a 13-year-old boy were not clear and credible. Mm-hmm. But he allowed the prosecution to continue to use Dusty's testimony anyway. And it was pretty compelling because it's really sad if you go into what was said and how he was prodded to basically, again, demonize the Hammonds.
Yes.
But again, to the credit of the Hammonds, when speaking of this testimony of their grandson, they understand that he was manipulated, and they express nothing but love for their troubled grandson. And wow. It just shows what kind of people they are. But that was so difficult. In fact, Dwight Hammond, he almost would not allow us to talk about it because it's so sensitive to them that they took their grandson and, who already was having these mental problems and having all these things, and then they just used their mind games and manipulated him and turned this as to demonize his own family in front of the jury. It's just sickening.
Wow.
So anyway, then the judge and the prosecuting attorney Papagni, they also tampered with the jury many times throughout the proceedings, including in the selection process. I'll just kind of go through that because they only allowed people on the jury who did not understand the customs and cultures of the ranchers and how the land is cared for. So they didn't understand. They got people from the inner city, people from outside the area that looked at fires like, oh my goodness, fires are so horrible, and they didn't understand that it was a necessary thing to burn, and they did it every year, and they've been doing it for hundreds of years. And then the other part is they chose jury members that were not from the area, of course, and some of them had to drive more than 2 hours each way. And so, they had to come, and after whatever they're doing, and they had to, come, they had to be in the court all day long, and their jobs and their family, and then they had to drive back, and then they had to do it the next day. And this is happening. So by day 8, they were exhausted and expressed desires, to be home, of course. And then on the final day, Judge Hogan kept pushing them to make a verdict. And several times he went into the room and he would push them to make a decision, pushing. And then Judge Hogan also would not allow the jury to hear what punishment could be imposed upon an individual that would be convicted as a terrorist under the 1996 Act. So they had no idea what kind of punishment that they would be even imposing on them, thinking that, they'll probably just get their hands slapped, and no big deal. But the jury, so the jury, not understanding the customs and cultures of the area, influenced by the prosecutor for 6 straight days, they were very exhausted. They were pushed for a verdict by the judge. They were unaware of the ramifications of convicting someone as a terrorist, and so they made a verdict and went home. They were like,
Do you mind me asking how you found
here.
that? How you found that out about the jury fatigue? Did you speak to to some of the jurors, or how'd you find out about that?
I spoke to those that were actually part of the proceedings, and then also to the court documents as well. Wow! And so, yeah, I would love to talk to some of the jurors, but that has not happened yet. So, anyway, and it makes sense, when you start thinking about, because to me, the whole time I'm going, how could a jury possibly convict someone of these charges? But if they don't think that the charges really are that, significant, and if they are literally exhausted and needing to and wanting to go home because they want this to be over, and then they've been literally manipulated, or I should say convinced or influenced by the prosecutor for 6 days, and then the judge is pushing them, get it done. I can see how they could easily say, you know what, there's probably not going to be that big a deal to the Hammonds anyway. We don't really know, maybe they'll get, fined, or they'll get slapped or whatever a little bit. And they rolled, and then they went home. They made a verdict and went home.
So Ammon, if you don't mind, just in my mind, I'm bullet pointing this. So first of all, they're hearing lopsided testimony from the prosecution, 6 days from the prosecution versus 1 from the defense. And this is to a group of people that are not a jury of the peers of these ranchers. And then they're suffering from info fatigue or juror fatigue. And then lastly, they just think that, well, on a technicality, sure, they set a fire, and it's probably just a technical rule. You're not supposed to be doing that. And this new terrorism thing, sure, we'll go ahead and apply it. And they just hastily. Yeah,
and you remember the prosecuting attorney, or the prosecutors, they made it like the jurors, and you can read this, they made it look, a lot more simple than it was, meaning all the juries are supposed to do is just determine whether the Hammonds started the fire or not. See, that's how they said it. The jury's decision is, are they guilty of starting the fire?
And they admitted that they started the fire.
They did start the fire.
Yes.
And so the jury's in the room going, well, are they guilty of starting a fire? Well, yeah, they're guilty of starting a fire. I guess if there's guilt there. But see, that's how they the prosecuting attorney for 6 days presented it,
Mm-hmm.
that their job and their decision is just to decide whether the Hammonds started a fire or not.
Wow.
And so the jury got together, and they were tired, and they were like, "Hey, they just said, yeah, the Hammonds started a fire, so yeah, they're guilty. Done. I'm going home."
Yeah.
And then they were not allowed to know that they could put him in prison or even possibly be a death sentence, and cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. Okay, so that's the way your prosecutors in our government, rather than wanting the best for people, they want another notch on their belt.
Mm-hmm. But what were they sentenced to?
So they were sentenced to the actual sentence was okay. Let me get back. The sentence was for national arsenal terrorists, and the judge sentenced them to 3 months in prison for Stephen, the father, or for Dwight, the father, and for Stephen was 12 months in federal prison. Okay, and they were also stipulated to pay $400,000 to the BLM.
Oh, jeez. Wow.
Yeah.
That certainly breaks a rancher. So that's almost a death sentence to a rancher to extract $400,000 from him.
That they've already literally, destroyed their living almost completely before.
Wow.
Now, this is interesting too. So Judge Hogan did see that the minimum sentence was 5 years, but he actually ruled for 3 months and 12 months because I wonder if he really was surprised that the jury convicted him, to be honest with you. But he gave him 3 months to 12 months, and rather than the minimum 5 years, because he said that if he required 5 years out of the Hammonds, that it would be a violation of the 8th Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment.
And the judge admitted this on the record.
Yeah, the judge admitted this. He says, I'm not going to sentence them to the full 5 years, which is the minimum sentence, because in this case it would be cruel and unusual punishment. So therefore, I'm going to give them 3 months and 12 months respectively.
Wow. Did they appeal this case, Hammond?
They did. Well, no, the Hammonds didn't. The Hammonds actually, again, by this time, they were so broken and abused that, and there's some other things that went on. They also thought, they made them believe that if they agreed to the stipulation of paying $400,000, that they wouldn't have to do any prison time. But that was basically a lie that they did, and so they actually agreed to the stipulations of paying as kind of part of the deal, if you will, and then found out later that they still had to serve time in prison. So, anyway, there's a lot to that, but there's just a tremendous amount of manipulation, lies, and so forth. Just something to note that the day of the sentencing was Judge Hogan's last day as a judge. Okay, he was retiring, which is important to understand, because he did not want his last case to be a hung jury. And which motivates him to go in and keep pushing all of this and making sure that this thing happened the way that he wanted, and they were convicted.
Right.
And so the last day of the sentencing, he retired, and in his honor, the staff, right there with everybody in the room and everything of the sentencing, served chocolate cake in the courtroom.
Disgusting.
Yeah, so here these people are literally losing their liberties, their property, their family has been turned against each other, all these horrible things, and the federal government is having chocolate cake in the courtroom.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So they went to jail. They were taken to jail at that point.
That's correct. The Hammonds, they submitted to him again. They thinking that we're just going to go to jail. after that it would be over and we could go back to our lives and back to our families and to our ranches. These people they don't want to fight. They're great people. But they're, a lot like, they're just salt of the earth people. They want peace and tranquility. And they served out their sentence, Dwight 3 months, Stephen 12 months, and then they were released.
Mm-hmm.
And so, here Stephen spent a year away from his family.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometime in June, and this is another thing, Rhonda Carges.
Obviously, by the way, Ammon, this has an impact on the ranching business to have two family members away from the ranch. Obviously, that has a huge impact, right?
It's only them two that are running the ranch. They had to hire extra hands, again, putting them, and they paid $200,000 in fine. They had lost half their ranch by this time. No, they had lost, because I told you after the hearing, they revoked 2 more of their grazing permits. So they had lost about 3/4 of the grazing of their ranch at this point.
Wow. And
now the women have to run the ranch and hire hands to even make it work. It's unbelievable what they've gone through. And that's why in that letter I said they have suffered abuses that even the Bundys can't fully understand.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's amazing that you say that, especially after what you guys have been through. Yeah.
Yeah. But lucky my dad has 7 sons. So, but they don't. He doesn't. So.
Actually, your father, and I think you agree with me when I say this, your father has millions and millions of sons in the United States of America. You know that, right?
I do know that.
And that message goes out to the fine gentlemen, not fine gentlemen, the disgusting human beings at the Bureau of Land Management. They need to recognize that. Go ahead, sir. Carry on.
Well, I appreciate that, and they should recognize that for their own good.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, in June of 2014, Rhonda Carges, field manager for the BLM, and her husband, Chad Carges, refuge manager for the Malheur Wildlife Refuge, which surrounds the Hammond Ranch. Interesting, right? Along with attorney Frank Papagni, exemplified further vindictive behavior by filing an appeal with the 9th District Federal Court seeking for Dwight and Stephen's return to federal prison for the entire 5 years. This was after they had already served prison. Now they're going after them for the 5 years for the minimum.
That's flat out double jeopardy, is it not?
Yeah, double jeopardy. And the only reason why you would do that is to be vindictive.
Yeah. Yeah.
What other reason? Why would any person want these people to go to prison for longer than they already have? Just the inhumanity is unbelievable. So anyway,
so what happened? What did the court say in the appeal? That's double jeopardy.
So,
why
don't know.
Why would they allow that?
It's absolutely double jeopardy. It's against the Fifth Amendment. Double jeopardy. It's a violation of the Fifth Amendment. And I don't know if you know the history of the 9th District Court of Appeals. They're the most liberal federal appeals court in the whole country. They're the ones that appeal all the gay rights issues and all of those issues and let it be where it is. But they're the ones that continue, to just disseminate the people's rights. Well, anyway, of course, you know what happened there. And that was during the resentencing, they required them to return to prison for the remainder of the 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So let me put this in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen is 46. His wife he has a wife and 3 children.
Mm-hmm.
They're all in school. They're young, and he is going to be not be with them for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Dwight is 74 years old, and he will leave his wife Susan, and she's 74, and to be alone after 55 years of marriage. And if he survives, he will be 79 when he is released. 79 years old, and he'll serve. He'll have to serve 4 years and 9 months.
I mean, I hate to mention this, but ladies and gentlemen, it is a fact that life expectancy of a male and a female is 78 for a female and 76 for a male. That's life expectancy. So they're essentially giving him a life sentence.
That's exactly right. And then you put on the stress that he's had to go through over the last 20, 25 years.
Yes, sir.
From and then you put him in prison, and that there is a good chance, a good reality that this is a life sentence.
Ammon, stay with me for one more segment. We're going to take a short break here. Can you stay with me?
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Amazing, horrifying tragedy. It's not just, we're not going to call it a story. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so glad I brought Ammon on to share this. And by the way, I want to remind you, it's we the people that control the flow of information. Like, comment, subscribe. We need to get the word out. Does not end there by no means. But October 2015, the Ninth District Court resentenced Dwight and Stephen, essentially issuing Dwight a death sentence because they want to keep him in prison past his life expectancy. And his wife, Susan, 74 years old, will be left alone after 55 years of marriage. It doesn't stop there. Continue on, Ammon, with the rest of the story here.
Yeah, so something that just shake your head at, you can't quite understand, because during the court proceedings, the Hammonds were forced to grant, now listen to this, to grant the BLM first right of refusal, which means if the Hammonds ever sold their ranch, they would have to sell it to the BLM by law. They were forced to sign a document stating that they would, if they sold their ranch, they would have to sell it to the Bureau of Land Management.
Unquestionably under duress, especially through the stress of these proceedings to begin with.
My
right?
goodness, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable. So anyway, Dwight and Stephen are ordered to report to federal prison on January 4th of 2016, so a couple months, to begin a resentencing, right? And both their wives will have to manage the ranch for several years without them. And then to date, they have paid $200,000 to the Bureau of Land Management, and the remainder $200,000 must be paid before the end of the year, 2015. And if the Hammonds cannot pay the fines, which they're having difficulty to gathering that up, so if they can't pay the fines, they will be forced to sell the ranch to the BLM or face further prosecution.
If they don't pay by the end of this year?
Yep, 2015.
Wow.
So you can see how all of this has been wrapped up, and how all of it, and their ranch is right in the middle of a wildlife refuge that's managed by the Fish and Wildlife Service, and all of these land and water issues, and they have wanted to remove them from the land. And it's pretty sickening. Again, remember, Rhonda Carges, who's the resource field manager for the BLM, is the wife of Chad Carges, the refugee manager for the Malheur Wildlife Refuge. And Rhonda specifically deals with the BLM issues relating to the area in and around the Hammonds property, including grazing denials. Okay. And her husband just happens to be the person in charge of all the issues surrounding the Hammonds ranch, such as water and access. Okay. Interesting, right?
Conflict of interest. Sure.
Yeah. And then the federal government went in and did some dirty work in the state of Oregon, and they changed their water laws, the Oregon water laws, to favor the federal agencies because of what happened with the Hammonds. And so now wildlife is now considered in the state of Oregon as an acceptable beneficial use for government agencies only.
Okay. There's
a lot to that. I won't go into detail for time, but
ultimately unconstitutional, right?
Oh, it's all unconstitutional. Remember, They do not have authority. They have not been given authority by the people. The federal government has not been given authority by the people
Right.
to be administrating these lands in the states in the first place.
Right. But, sir, if you don't mind me just reemphasizing Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 17, in order for that to happen, you need the approval of the state legislature and Congress, correct?
And they have to pay for it, and they can only use it for the proper purposes, which is not public land.
Right. Wow.
It's for like military bases, dockyards. Because remember, the federal government's authority lies in national defense, lies in international trade. It lies in appellate court when two or more states can't get along, and a few other little things like post offices. But they are not allowed to own massive amounts of land inside a state. That was given up when the state became a state. The federal government gave up that right to the people of the state. That's what happens. And so they do not have this authority in the first place, and yet now they're basically have become predators upon the land and the resource users of inside the state. Because they know where true wealth is generated from. True wealth, again, is generated from the land.
Yes.
If you want to be powerful, listen to what you can do you can control the food that people goes into their mouth. You can control everything, because everything comes from the earth. All you got to do is control what comes, who takes what from the earth, and you have just controlled everything.
Yeah, that's right. Now, Ammon, I would say, as far as relating this exact story, it's got unique circumstances. It's not a Bundy Ranch, standoff potential per se, but obviously some corrective action needs to be taken. It needs to come from obviously the sheriff's department and the legal profession. Have they lawyered it up big time to unravel this thing? What's required?
So I've been in communication with the sheriff and very close communication, and I am continuing to remind him and to help him understand that his duty is to protect the life, liberty, and property of the people in this county. And as he took an oath to protect against local and domestic threat, that's what his oath of office says. Actually, when he takes the oath of office, that domestic threat, it does not say local and domestic threat. It says foreign and domestic threat. Now, that foreign, if you will, or domestic threat, in this case, is the federal government, and it is his duty to check and balance them when they have, violated and abused the people in this county. It is his duty. That's what he was hired to do. And so we're doing all we can to get him to make a stand. And he has plenty of legal basis to say, hey, wait a minute, there's so many things wrong here. I'm going to put a hold on it. Yeah. Okay. And you're not going to put them in prison, and we're going to figure this thing out. And then what we're pushing for is that they actually assemble a grand jury, because, again, the federal government just happened to skip that part, right? They did not. The Hammonds were not indicted by a grand jury as the Fifth Amendment requires, or at least the Hammonds were not afforded their Fifth Amendment rights, if you will,
their
or
full
the right
due
that
process rights. Sure, yeah.
And so we're encouraging the sheriff to say, hey, wait a minute, there's so many things that are in question. We're not going to allow the federal government to take them into custody. We're going to protect them. And then we're going to, the county will assemble, or the sheriff's office will assemble a grand jury, and the grand jury can determine whether the Hammonds should have been indicted in the first place.
Can a grand jury review the proceedings, everything that's happened up to this point?
Absolutely.
Yeah. They have an obligation to, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then we're certain that a grand jury will find that the Hammonds are, innocent, and they will exonerate them. And we're certain of that. I mean, we're just certain of that. And so once that happens, then the sheriff can stand on it and and the others are, other entities, or at least powers that be, if you will, can stand on that and say, this is wrong, and basically either create a sanctuary, continue to create a sanctuary for them, or and I believe it'll be or I should say, and basically get this thing straightened out so the Hammonds can go back to their homes and their lives that was so rudely interrupted.
All right, so Ammon, I want you to give us action items that we the people are the ones that have to bring a public awareness to these issues, put political pressure somewhere somehow to have our elected officials, the sheriff, do the right thing. What do we the people need to do to help rally support behind this family?
We at this point we need to contact the sheriff, email him, and his information. If you're posting these things that we've been posting on your website,
absolutely,
they're available there under the letter to Sheriff Ward. We need to contact him, by phone call, email, write him a letter, and basically let him know that inform him. One is that you care and you love this country, and that it is his duty to defend the Hammonds, and this is important, and that you will stand behind him politically and physically if needed. You will stand with him.
Yes,
and let him know that that if he chooses what's right, that he will not have to stand alone. It's not fair for him to stand alone either.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Okay?
And bear the full brunt of the federal government, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, if he makes his stand, we as Americans across the country need to stand and bear him up. And that is a must. And so people need to be prepared. They might need to be prepared to come out. They might need to be prepared in other different ways. But they need to show and express that the sheriff needs to make the right decision here and protect the Hammonds. And if he chooses to, that we will be there. We've got his back. Yep.
Okay. Emmett, can I ask you something? I know this thing is very well documented. This is what I want to do, just to make sure that we cross our T's and dot our I's and don't, speak out of turn. You know this case very, very well. It's well documented. Is there a chance that you could possibly generate, either for those people that choose to make telephone calls, maybe give 2 or 3 bullet points as to how to encourage somebody? Because we don't want, of course, people picking up the phone, issuing threats to the BLM or anything like that, or stepping out of line. Can you prepare some recommended solutions, whether you call or write or send an email? You think you can do that to supplement the material you have online?
Yes, I will do that.
Yeah.
I'll try to have it up by tomorrow, which is good, and I will send it out through all the channels that we send it in. Also, that way you can post it on yours, but I'll also put it on the it's bundyranch.blogspot.com.
Yes.
Okay? Yes. And you can go there, and I will put it there so that it'll have the contact information. I'll probably give the contact information for like the county commissioners and the district representatives, and even the mayor, or excuse me, even the governor, even though I don't know that she's going to do anything about it, because she's probably got the same ideology as the federal agents. But anyway, with that being said, maybe she will. Maybe I'm wrong. I probably shouldn't have said that. Give her a chance. But maybe she is. But
at minimum, she needs to know what the penalty is for being unconstitutional.
That's right. Now, this is the other thing. Before we leave, and I do have to go. I'm catching a plane here.
Yes, sir.
But Pete, this is the other part. If the sheriff decides not to stand, we will be in the same situation as at the Bundy Ranch, where all levels of government have failed to protect the life, liberty, and property of the people.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
If the sheriff fails to stand, we must as a people stand and defend these people. Yes. It would be greatly unjust if they spend one more day in prison.
Yes, sir.
And we, the American people, we will be held accountable if we allow them
Yes.
to have to endure these injustices.
Mm-hmm.
And so as hard as it may be, if the sheriff decides not to protect,
Mm-hmm.
we must, in a very proper way,
Yes.
we must protect the Hammonds. And I don't know how or how that'll happen, but I'm sure that it'll come. Just as all the other things came, as we begin to understand, as I know from the Lord,
Yes, sir.
that we were guided and directed.
Yes, sir.
And I know in this case we also have been. And I know that if let's say not when, because if the sheriff decides not to stand,
Right.
I'm sure that we will know what to do at that point, and the American people will be called upon to defend this good family.
That's right. And God watched over us when Sheriff Gillespie basically abandoned thousands of people and left us to the hands of the BLM that pointed weapons of war at us. David Ward, the sheriff, has an opportunity not to be a Gillespie and abandon the American people. Right?
That is correct.
That's right. Ammon, thank you so much. I'll tell you what, I'm all in to make sure we bring public awareness to this thing, get people properly educated. The first order of business right now is to get yourself educated. The letter to the sheriff, David Ward, is out there, the facts and events. Get educated, and then we, the people, are going to take action to bring the appropriate constitutional pressure upon David Ward to do the right thing. Thank you, Ammon. Okay,
Thank you, Pete.
We're committed, man. Thank you very much, and thank you for everything you do on behalf of our country. This is yet another instance where, ladies and gentlemen, we the people, as the last line of defense, we have to do what's absolutely right for our country. Ammon, thank you so much for your time. Safe travels, and we'll be talking to you.
Thank you, Pete. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen.
Phone and tablet repair made easy.
Hey, militia, this is Ben Time Traveler. We gotta do our part. We gotta like, comment, subscribe, and share and get the word out. It's our duty.
You're listening to the Pete Santilli Show. Pete Santilli, telling you the truth, whether you like it or not.
Okay, so the theme of today's show when we opened up, and it was coming off of yesterday's episode with Regina and Borgia.
Mm-hmm.
All right, she is that's Cooper, the talk show dog, who wants to talk and grab a microphone. We need to get him either helmet cam or get him his own microphone.
Yes.
That he can walk up and talk. Yeah, no, don't worry. You're
Little
going to go
guy.
in a few minutes. We're not done just yet. So anyways, the theme is for we the people to take action. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you have somebody, and starting with Regina and Borgia in Dallas, taking
Yes.
action, getting with the local officials, doing the absolute right thing. It's we the people that rally behind that effort. We're e-militia. We're not all in Dallas, but we can help be supportive of it. Because I'll tell you what, can she get a couple thousand people herself to go show up at a city council meeting? Probably not. Not everyone in the local community is awakened to it. Plus, there's resistance by the local media to demonize her, consider her a nutcase, and so on and so forth. But we all know that fluoride in water is very, very bad. There's a lot of very well-educated people. So we are the last line of defense to
Right.
help her.
That's right.
So we do that. All right. Now, in this case, this instance here with the Hammond family, and I hear it, it's resoundingly clear that this is a good, hardworking, I'm going to call them steak and potatoes family. They want to live their ranching business. And guess what? They made certain admissions in court, right? They trusted the legal system. Well, obviously, we didn't intend to do anything bad. So, yeah, we set a fire. That's what ranchers do. They said that in front of a jury that was not of their peers, that didn't understand the full implications of that ranchers will set those fires appropriately, that they understand that rejuvenation of the brush and
Right.
all of that stuff is really, really important. Agriculturally, it's important
and
to
they've
do
been
that.
doing it for hundreds of years.
They've been doing it for hundreds of
We
years.
did it on the farm that I was raised on too. You do it every season.
Right. Ranchers understand that. They didn't have a bunch of people that fully understood that. What the full impact was, that jury was not given proper instructions when they said, you need to determine guilty or not guilty based on whether or not they set a fire. Really? Is that what it's about? Absolutely not, because the penalty was as much as death. And in fact, now, through what I believe is double jeopardy, they've issued a death sentence to the father. So here's my point. So what do we do to counter this? We already know that the federal government, the federal judiciary, the Ninth Circuit, is nothing but a tool that allows people like Daniel P. Love, who set out to go get cattle, land, and get his little badge for doing a good job on behalf of the BLM in violation of the Constitution out at Bundy Ranch. And he uses his court orders. His court orders, as in Bundy Ranch, were obtained unconstitutionally. That everything that is set for this Hammond family, the destruction of their family, has come about in straight up violation of the U.S. Constitution.
Right.
So there is an opportunity here for Sheriff Ward to do what's constitutional. Just as Sheriff Gillespie was brought to the podium on April 12th, 2014, he was given 1 hour to make a decision. Okay. And if at that point, so help me God, I know this. I was standing there. I was living and breathing this. I spoke to Ammon Bundy. I spoke with every single family member as to what the decision would be after that point. Quite frankly, I don't even think the Bundy family anticipated that Sheriff Gillespie would abandon thousands of people, that next step had to come directly from God himself. And he watched over us that day. And Gillespie never showed back up. He went to meet with Eric Holder and Harry Reid down in Las Vegas. That's where Gillespie went.
Right.
With the BLM, with Harry Reid and Eric Holder. And he left us stranded with weapons of war pointed at we the peaceful people. The majority of everyone at Bundy Ranch, I'm going to tell you this right now, that went up to that gate, I'm going to say Kenny from Michigan. He didn't have a gun on him. He was there with his heart and soul. And a bunch of peaceful people, women, children were in that canyon.
Right.
Peaceful people that were backed up. Okay. If you want to know about the quote unquote, the militia members. All right. They were there. And I know this because I was there starting on the 9th, telling everybody muzzles down, long rifles across your back. We are not in an aggressive posture here. We're here in defense of our God-given rights. We're here to protect the peaceful people, the Bundy family members that want their cattle back and the land back, the peaceful protesters that will go to the fence, okay, on the 12th, if necessary, and demand that the federal government release the cattle, release the land, and get the hell out of town. That the land belongs to the people of the state of Nevada, and the cattle belong to the Bundys. And peaceful people were going to go assert their demands upon the BLM. And the sheriff had to back them up. Constitutionally, had the authority over the federal government. Gillespie turned his back. What was the last line of defense? The last line of defense were not a bunch of gun toters. Okay? That's not what the last line of defense was. The story behind Bundy Ranch is that the last line of defense, okay, were the peaceful people that went to that fence and said, get the hell out of here. Okay? A mechanism as part of that is their backup was that if you ever fire a shot upon these peaceful people, it would have been a bloody massacre. And yes, in fact, it was. And guess what? We were prepared to die to make sure that the peaceful people that went to the fence and asserted those demands were going to be protected. And in fact, they were. And not one shot was fired.
Yeah.
Same thing I'm going to say. I am fully and completely and totally supportive of making sure that the Hammond family receives their due process, their due justice. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen in the federal court system. But regardless, they need a grand jury convened. I'm fully supportive of that. And we need to support this Sheriff Ward. That Sheriff Ward, I'm going to put a message to you, sir. I'm going to appeal to you. And I'm going to say that I looked Sheriff Gillespie in the eyes and even told him at the foot of that stage, Sheriff, do the right thing. You have the constitutional authority to make the right decision. And Sheriff Gillespie abandoned us, and we almost all died because of one man, and that was Sheriff Gillespie. He had now, thankfully, there was an undersheriff that stepped in when it counted and said, this is out of control. What do you guys want? And it was a constitutional sheriff that ended the Bundy Ranch standoff. And he did the right thing. And guess what? It's the freest area in the entire country as a result of what? Was it one man? No, ladies and gentlemen. It's the freest area because of what we the people did.
Now, what did Ammon say? When you ask him about, does it raise any concerns for you that, they left this family alone for a long, long time. And then one day they just came back with a vengeance, you know? Yeah. And, that has to be a worry for the Bundy family.
You know what, though? This is what I do know about the Bundy family. I've spoken to them. I've spoken to Clive and Bundy. He's a very prayerful man. He knows that God is going to guide him through this process. He will do the right thing. It's a matter of right or wrong. We are steak and potatoes people, period. Clive and Bundy, just as Ammon Bundy said, he may not be the most articulate person in a suit and tie or a politician or anything like that. He's a very wise man. He's a very determined man. I remember when his comments in defense of the black families and the Hispanic families that he's come to know, he asked that question: are you better off today than you were from where you came from in your family history? Are you better off today? Asked that question. It wasn't in a racist way. They took his words out of context. And what did they do? The same pattern of demonizing and taking away public support. The BLM uses that technique because they learned from their FBI cronies. This is how you kill a family like the Koreshes. This is how you kill people at Ruby Ridge. This is how you kill people at Bundy. You have to take out popular support. We need to push back on this as big as we can. This is not an Ammon Bundy thing. He knows this. It's not a Bundy Ranch supporter thing. This is a constitutional issue where we, the people, come together, especially with a great success story with Bundy Ranch, right? A peaceful means where we, the people, stand up and say, we're going to do what's right. This is right or wrong. Okay?
Right.
How do you know we are right? Okay? And you don't need to be a constitutional expert, ladies and gentlemen. First thing you need to do, I want you to go open up your Constitution, read Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 17, and tell me, you read it, and you tell me if the federal government has jurisdiction over these people's land. Tell me that. You don't need to be a lawyer or a scholar. Our founding fathers set forth in the Constitution, very specific, very clear, that the federal government cannot own land without the approval of both legislatures, the state legislature and Congress. And once they approve it, it's only for specific things, which are military bases, post offices, federal court buildings. It's very specific. Right. Outside of that, they can't come in and take over this family's land.
Yeah.
Forcing a family.
Which is one of the reasons why they really do want to federalize everything. They want to own your schools.
It can easily be unraveled by we the people. Guess how? You revert back to the U.S. Constitution. Anything outside of that, any rules, regulations, even, I'm going to go so far as to say this to the 9th District, okay? The federal courts, okay? If they rule in violation to Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 17, their ruling is unconstitutional. I said this to Daniel P. Love in the dirt out at Bundy Ranch. He said, I have a court order. I said, your court order is unconstitutional. It's null and void. Did I not say that?
Right.
He said, oh, the Constitution is not settled out here in the dirt. Daniel P. Love, it was settled out in the dirt at Bundy Ranch. It will be settled out in the dirt in Oregon, New Mexico, anywhere in the United States of America. The Constitution protects the dirt. Our lives depend, and we cannot survive without, as Ammon Bundy just said, without the natural resources and the dirt. You try to take that away from us, you cut off our ability to live as human beings, and we won't let that stand. I won't let it stand myself as an individual, right? You guys, this is a beautiful family. If you're inspired by the beauty of the individuals that are impacted by this family, take action. Get educated, all right? We're going to put out all the links. We're going to not threaten anybody. Enforcing the Constitution is not a threat. You don't have to do that. We have it on our side. We literally have God on our side as well. Nobody will try to deter us. You can't demonize us. You can't call me a radical for wanting to enforce Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 17. You can try real hard. They've been trying for a long time. The BLM, Daniel P. Love, shoot, are we going to see you in Oregon? Huh? I'll meet you in the dirt, homie. Share for, do the right thing on behalf of the American public. Why don't you be that one hero that all of you first responders look to be? You don't need an MRAP. You need a whole bunch of constitutional people. Millions and millions of sons of Clive and Bundy exist. And we're behind every blade of grass, so don't forget about that.